78. 78 is the number of days between January 20th and April 6th. 78 is also the number of times I watched this video on my recent 11-week trip to Thailand. Many of you may know me as an English teacher or perhaps an organizer of English summer camps for Russian children. This is what I've spent the last 3 years of my life doing. While those 3 years have been incredibly rewarding, towards the end of that time, I began to feel frustrated. You see, I have a burning desire to change the world, to build the future. And I began to feel frustrated in my role as an educator because I realized that no matter how good of a teacher I became, my ability to impact civilization would always be limited by the number of people I could impact personally. I realized that if I really wanted to make a dent in the universe, I needed a leverage point, some kind of a force multiplier. Technology seemed like it might be the answer. So in January, I bought a ticket to Thailand and devoted the next 3 months to learning how to program. Today, I want to convince you that life is a game. More importantly than that, I want to convince you that by choosing to look at life as a game, you can achieve more than you ever thought possible. What is a game? This definition from Wiktionary suggests that a game is an activity described by a set of rules, especially for the purpose of entertainment, often competitive, and having an explicit goal. Today, we're going to look at each part of this definition, but I'd like to start from the end. A game is an activity with an explicit goal. Most people have goals, but we rarely define these goals in the scope of our entire lives. Finish university, find a job, buy a car, get married, have children. These are great goals, and you should understand that we need these type of goals. But if these goals don't exist within the context of a larger goal, it will be difficult for you to win at the game of life. For example, my overarching goal is to use technology to revolutionize language education so that the greatest minds in each field can work together without linguistic barriers at improving the world. Every other goal in my life supports this goal. Any exercise goals or nutrition goals I have so that I can have energy to achieve this. I have goals for building relationships, and that's because I realize I can't do this by myself. Any skill acquisition goals, such as learning how to program, or public speaking, or learning a foreign language. All of these goals also support this. Author and public speaker Brian Tracy has said, "You have two choices in life. You can either work on your own goals, or you can go to work for someone else and work on achieving their goals." In the spirit of this year's festival theme, I think it might be more appropriate to say, you have two choices in life. You can either play your own game, or you can play for someone else's team and work on winning their game. Let's go back to our definition. A game is an activity, especially for the purpose of entertainment. Life is certainly not just about entertainment. But to win at the game of life, I think it's critical that your goals be entertaining. For example, let's say that you want to become a doctor in order to save lives. An excellent goal. But if you find subjects like chemistry and biology boring, you won't have the motivation it takes to become a great doctor. I think that the importance of entertainment in the game of life can be summed up in the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said, "Nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm." Continuing on in our definition of a game, we see that a game is an activity described by a set of rules. Just like any sports game, video game, or board game, there are rules to the game of life that we can do little or nothing about. The laws of physics are one such example of a set of rules. If you jump off a building, because of the law of gravity, you will fall and die. There's little we can do about this. There's also little we can do to circumnavigate many of the rules set in place by our political systems. If you kill someone, you will probably go to jail. However, the game of life, unlike other games, allows us to create our own additional set of rules that will help us achieve our goals. I mentioned that I watched this video every day for 11 weeks when I was living in Thailand. This was a rule that I created for myself. I knew that to learn how to program in only 3 months, I would need to wake up early every day and put in a lot of hours. But I also knew from past experience that if I simply created a rule, wake up at 7 a.m. and start studying, from past experience I knew that something like this would happen. There would be days when my desire to change the world through learning how to program just would not be as strong as my desire to crawl back in bed. So instead I created one very simple rule. Every morning at 7 a.m. I had to wake up and watch this video. After watching the video, if I wanted to go back to sleep, I could. And only once in those 78 days, after a night of good jazz and moderate libations, did I decide after watching the video that I wanted to go back to sleep. By committing to watching this video every morning, I realized that I could greatly increase the chances of achieving my real objective, which was learning how to program. So think about your own game of life. What rules can you create for yourself to help you achieve your objectives? That brings us to the last part of our definition. A game is an activity which is often competitive. Now, to me, this is perhaps the most interesting part of the definition. Because while life certainly can be competitive, I'd like to propose that treating life as a competition is not the best winning strategy. When two parties disagree, they often look to compromise as the solution. Skilled negotiators and businessmen, however, understand that there is always a third option. A third option in which both parties can receive more than they even wanted in the original deal. We call this strategy win-win. And I saw in our program that I think later today we will have Yevgeny. We'll be giving a talk about win-win strategies. So I'd like to forego some of the more well-known examples that I had prepared and just give you one example from my own personal life. 4 years ago was the first time that I started working at the English summer camps in Moscow. I received a small salary in compensation for my work, but the real reason I wanted to work at the summer camps was for the experience. It was the only opportunity I had to live in Russia, to talk with Russian people, practice my language skills, also practice my teaching skills. The next year, however, I was invited back, and by this point, I realized that money is kind of important. So, I demanded double the salary I had received the previous year. I think this kind of offended some of the management at the organization I had been working for, because they essentially came back and said, "Ты кто такой? Давай, до свидания." It seemed like an impossible situation. I wanted more money, the camp wanted to spend less money, and neither of us were willing to compromise. This would have been the end of our professional relationship. But one person at the company, Maria, who is now my good friend, she understood the principle of win-win. She came to me and she proposed that we convert one of the spare rooms at camp into an office space and install Wi-Fi so that I could continue teaching English on Skype as I had been doing during the rest of the year. This came at a small expense for the company, but was a huge benefit to me as it allowed me to keep working. She also proposed that we start offering private English lessons at camp in addition to the group lessons that we had offered the previous year. The result was that I didn't earn 2, but 3 times as much as I had the first year. And the camp also made more money. The real benefit, however, came not from the extra money that I earned, but it came from the lesson that Maria taught me. That lesson I will carry with me through the rest of my life, and that is that win-win solutions always exist. We just need to have the willingness and the creativity to find them. How many people have played Monopoly? Okay. So, I have a question. What is the best color property in Monopoly? Go ahead, shout it out. What is the best color?
Violet.
Red, violet, green,
Yeah.
yellow. Okay, so lots of options. Many people tend to think that Boardwalk and Park Place are the best properties in Monopoly. They're wrong. It's easy to think this because they're the most expensive. You can earn the most money each time someone lands there. But it's a little bit more complicated than that. Monopoly was my favorite game growing up as a child. In fact, I liked it so much that I was dedicated to becoming the best player that I could. My grandma even used to call me the shark because I didn't play for fun. I played to win. I was so determined to become good at this game that I read Monopoly strategy books as a 10-year-old, as opposed to perhaps Harry Potter, which would have been a little more normal for someone my age. It turns out that the best properties in Monopoly are the orange properties. The reason for this is actually quite simple. That's because jail is the most visited space on the board. You can be sent here by rolling doubles 3 times in a row. You can draw a card from chance or community chest, and you go to jail. Now, it's what happens after you leave jail that makes these properties so valuable. Because of the probability of a 2-dice roll, 7 being the most frequent number, followed by 6 and 8, and then 5 and 9, means that after leaving jail, you're most likely to land on an orange property. This means that although some of the other properties may earn you more money when a player lands on them, it's the frequency with which players land on the orange properties that make them so valuable. Now, I can stand here and tell you that, let's say we were playing Monopoly, okay? And I could tell you that New York Avenue is better than Boardwalk. Even if you trust me, even if you believe me, you probably won't change your strategy. It's not until you do the work yourself, until you read the books, until you study the probability tables and follow through with the calculations that you can really internalize that the orange properties are better than everything else. The game of life is the same way. It's not until you do the work yourself, until you really understand the psychology, the science, the mathematics behind these ideas, that you can take your old instinctive strategies and exchange them for a winning strategy. If there's one thing that I'd like you to take away from this talk today, it's that the game of life, just like any other game, is a game that through research and practice, you can become better at. Now, this is often not easy, but the rewards certainly far outweigh the efforts. And in times of difficulty, I find strength in the words of Henry David Thoreau, who said, "I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of man to elevate his life by conscious endeavor." So I'd like to close by asking you, how are you going to elevate your game and start playing at the next level? Thank you.